All right, we are officially live talking about the astrology of February 2026, which is honestly contains some massive astrology. Yeah, trying out doing this on my laptop for the first time, and yeah, I don't believe Substack gives me an ability to share my screen, so I'm just gonna type some notes of what we'll be talking about in the chat. But yeah, major astrological events happening in February 2026, mainly headlined by the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, which, yeah, Saturn enters Aries February 13th, and then Neptune just went into Aries on January 26th. And these two come together in the sky February 20th. And that is an event that takes place every 36 years. So you're right there. You can tell this is something that doesn't happen every week, every month, every year, not even every decade. And then, yeah, let me look at the other things we're going to be talking about. Saturn enters Aries February 13th. Saturn conjures Neptune in Aries February 20th. Other big highlight we have is the solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Lunar New Year, Year of the Fire Horse, all that. February 1st, we have a Leo full moon. Very cool, passionate beginning to the month. So yeah, I'm just going to type some of these notes in the chat so that we have them visible. Then on February 10th, from February 10th to March 6th, Venus is going to be in her exalted sign of Pisces. Venus in Pisces, 10 to, what is it, March? Let's take a date. March 6th. And so yeah, especially a planet like Venus being empowered in sign of Pisces, very big news. A lot of love flowing. Definitely something that a collective can use during this time with so much volatility going on as well. And the good news doesn't stop there because Venus goes on to trine Jupiter and Cancer February 22nd. Now, yeah, we're going to talk about that, but Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Venus is exalted in Pisces. These are the two benefic planets, the two planets that are responsible for bringing us the most love, blessings, abundance, working in harmony. It's just beautiful. It's one of the most powerful energetic signatures you can get. And yeah, pretty crazy all this happened like within just a week of each other. Venus in Pisces trines Jupiter in Cancer. Because yeah, what is it? That solar eclipse February 17th. Saturn conjoins Neptune February 20th. And the Venus trines Jupiter February 22nd. Those are three big events. I mean, Venus trines Jupiter every year, but it's one of those events on the year that you circle. And especially with them being both exalted, like that's a signature that doesn't happen very often. So very healing in the midst of some deep, profound energetic changes with Neptune and Aries, Saturn and Aries conjoining together. New worlds type thing. So yeah, we're going to get into that as the call goes on. And then Mercury does go retrograde this month, February 25th. Mercury retrograde. Feb 25th to, when does that end? That ends on March 20th. So about a month or so. And yeah, Mercury retrograde, really not the biggest deal. We'll get into that, but it's yeah, just a bit of like a mental slowdown, tech glitches, miscommunications, minor delays. Mercury retrograde is that quite trendy on like pop culture, like everything's wrong in life. Really, it's not that big a deal, especially with all the rest of this massive astrology. But Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces. Pisces is a bit more like mystical, magical, fantastical. Pisces is quite logical. So Mercury struggles a little bit in Pisces. So another reason why this particular Mercury retrograde might be a little bumpy, for lack of a better term. But yeah, we'll talk about that. And then February 27th, Mars in Aquarius squares Uranus in Taurus. Which, yeah, is a little volatile. Definitely disruptive. Increased risk of accidents, which on top of the Mercury retrograde, another signature for increased risk of accidents. So definitely towards the end of the month, wanting to exercise some caution. Mars in Aquarius. Square Uranus in Taurus. And yeah, in April is when Uranus moves on to the sign of Gemini, finishing about 8 years of its time in Taurus. Oh, yeah. And those are our main highlights that we're going to be talking about this month. So, okay. Major energetic signature of the month is dominated by the Neptune-Saturn conjunction. Neptune just went into Aries January 26th. I wrote my last piece on that. Check that out. I wrote horoscopes for all 12 signs. Next, we're going to be talking about Saturn into Aries. But Neptune, it is a planet of imagination, reality, fantasy. And it's really interesting. In many ways, Saturn is kind of the opposite energy of that. Saturn is the planet of reality, of structure, boundary. Neptune is boundless. Saturn tries to bring boundaries to that. So when you see these two come together, it can look like an erosion of boundaries. The last time that this happened, using a bit of the historical context, about 36 years ago was in the year 1989, when Saturn and Neptune last conjoined. That was in the sign of Capricorn, an earth sign, so that's a bit of a different signature with that. In the real world, most astrologers point to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and that later was kind of the event that led to the fall of Soviet Union. But it's such a literal manifestation of the energy of walls coming down, walls being eroded. And that is also one of the energies of this month, is that there is something about like people coming together, and we are like building the walls down. Because it's an Aquarius season, there is a big theme around people versus the establishment, ongoing themes like that, which also has to do with 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's almost like there are new ideals emerging, and they're coming up against these rigid structures. But these rigid structures are, kind of past their, not necessarily their due date, but they've starting to fall on their own. And the will of the people is at a point where, just these rigid structures just can't hold up anymore. I mean, yeah, talking from my experience, I'm in the United States and I think about the money a lot. Like, United States has approaching like $40 trillion in debt. That's more than 100K dollars of debt per citizen. So, I mean, most people, I think only like 10% of people have some degree of savings. And the financial reality is a little like doom and gloom at the moment. People struggling to make ends meet. And yeah, just kind of interesting moment in history. But you can see how the centralization of everything and the control of money is one of these power structures that is beginning to dissolve. The people were born to be abundant. We are created to create. I believe that abundance is our natural state, and it's not natural to have so much suffering like this. Welcome, Tyler. Glad you could make it. Just going over some of the February astrology, which is definitely a very big month indeed. But yeah, so that's theme of the month is predominated by Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But we'll go a little bit in chronological order now. February 1st, we start off the month with the Leo full moon. Now, I think the Leo-Aquarius axis is one of the more interesting storylines of 2026. Abundance is 100% our natural state. Exactly. Agreed, Tyler. Now, yeah, starting off the year with Leo full moon. So Leo is kind of like the star on stage. Aquarius is like the audience. So Leo, you definitely have like something of like an idol star type figure. In ancient astrology, Leo was associated with the king. And since Pluto's gone into Aquarius, we're a few years into that. one of the themes has been kind of no kings protests or protests against the current regime. It's all the other stuff that gets in the way. Oh yeah, I know, right? I mean, yeah, I was bringing up how, you know, United States has $40 trillion in debt. That's more than 100K per citizen. That's definitely one of the things that gets in the way. Um, yeah, Leo full moon. Leo rules the heart, and so this is a kind of passionate, energetic beginning to the month, but it's part of a longer storyline of reconnecting to your inner fire, the passion within. And that's also a theme of not only this month but this year. You have both Neptune and Saturn going into Aries and fire signs. Jupiter is going to go into Leo later this year. There's a big transition into the elements of fire, which has to do with your passion, your inner life essence and life force. And the Leo full moon on February 1st is a moment that is kind of bringing all that to the surface. This month also has the Lunar New Year, which is the transition from ending the year of the snake into year of the fire horse. So I think that's cool how those kind of coincide, which not that Chinese astrology is particularly my area of expertise, but finishing off the year of the snake, very much more low key, reflective, internal energy. And now with fire horse, it's like we're charging forward, beginning blazing a new trail. And that's the theme of these kind of regimes collapsing, these structures crumbling around us. It's like now there's a need to blaze a new trail. And with Neptune being involved, it's like we can all kind of feel a whisper in our soul, something a dream we have. I think it's cool how just a couple weeks ago he had Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The I Have a Dream speech, very historical and quite fitting of this end of Pisces time, because we've had Neptune in Pisces since 2011. Neptune is a planet that goes around the sun about 165 years, takes 165 years. So it spends about 13, 14 years in one sign. And Neptune and Pisces, Neptune is the mana ruler of Pisces. They're both quite mystical, spiritual. I think astrology actually got pretty popular over the last 15 years partially because of Neptune and Pisces. But one of those other effects was social media, the rise of Instagram. Because Neptune's kind of shadow side is illusion, deception, not knowing what's real, confusion, or like a fogginess. And right when Neptune went into Pisces around 2011 was when Instagram was starting to become popular. So a lot of astrologers associate Neptune's time in Pisces with kind of a rise of social media. I just think about Instagram. I remember thinking like 10 years ago, like, the Instagram filter, and then the Snapchat filter. It's like we are putting on these filters that aren't exactly, real life. And that's spawned a whole tree of other issues about, going on like social media, like not feeling as good about yourself because other people might have something like better than you, falling into like comparison traps like that. But that's not reality. It's just like, Instagram life. Only the highlights, only the viral content, which isn't always real life. And yeah, super interesting what's going on with TikTok right now. Just as Neptune leaving Pisces, closing out this kind of era of what social media has been to us for the last 14 years. A tool of escape, but also a tool of, well, living out dreams and fantasies in that nature and having constant access to it. Now, yeah, feel free to chime in here, Tyler, but yeah, the TikTok, I think most people are kind of going away from TikTok almost out of protest. I mean, yeah, I know the United States now has ownership. I think they're doing something with facial recognition. People are like, I don't know if I vibe with that. I'm going to check out. But yeah, the whole landscape of social media is changing. And I think just a place like Substack is kind of a cool example of how social media is changing. A lot of people are kind of able to create their art, tap into their creative, intuitive nature. Oh yeah, Tyler, I'm open to inviting you up on stage if you're in the mood to talk through any of this stuff. I definitely always do better at live streams with a partnership, having more of a conversation. So I'll definitely like to have people like that in future ones. Because yeah, this is something of an experiment. See how talking about the month ahead in general, if this one feels cool, goes cool, maybe I'll do this every month then. All right, so yeah, for February 1st, Leo full moon, and February 10th is when Venus goes into Pisces. And Venus will be in Pisces from February 10th to March 6th. Venus, power, the planet of love, connection, beauty, exalted in the sign of Pisces. Super compassionate sign. Also a bit of a spiritual mystical. But it's just it's a really cool signature because it's like love is flowing. And in the middle of everything about this month, solar eclipse in Aquarius, Saturn conjoining Neptune. It is really cool to see, especially Venus in Pisces trining Jupiter in Cancer. It doesn't get much better than that. That is so healing, so connecting. It is the vibe of walls dissolving between us, but it's like these energetic walls. As humans, there's so much more that connects us. This is the vibe of like unconditional love, creating a home. Always open talking live with you. Yeah, I'm gonna invite you on stage. Let's see. Yeah, that's February 22nd, which is just 2 days after the Saturn Neptune conjunction, February 20th, which is 3 days after the Aquarius eclipse on February 17th. All right, so yeah, Aquarius eclipse season. Eclipse season happened. We get a full moon and a new moon every month, but every 6 months we get what's called eclipses, which are essentially just like full moons and new moons, but like times 10 of the intensity. Now, it is like a power surge. The eclipse is like the sun is blocking the moon, or the earth is blocking the sunlight from reaching the moon. So it is like this vibe of darkness, a power surge, energy surge. Now, every eclipse season can feel like something of an emergency event. There's all this urgency, but it's also a little bit, you don't have to do anything. So, like, I always try to do less stuff, underschedule myself. Eclipse season can take a lot out of us. And this month, especially with so much change going on, takes a lot out of us. I know since Neptune went into Aries a few days ago, it's been kind of a heavy energy. We're completing a lot. It's like can feel like feelings of loss, of grieving. As I welcome Tyler onto the stage. How has your January been? How are you
I
feeling?
No, it's been good. I did not realize when you said, "Hey, I'd love you to hop on," it was now. So I'm totally unprepared. But
Yeah, a little impromptu. Yeah, unscripted,
no,
super raw.
it's been good. I was gonna make a comment. Someone said hello, by the way. You're totally right. I mean,
Hello, soul nuts.
it's just your comments about social media. We talked about this in December. It feels like the whole world is taking a step back and doing some kind of spiritual and personal accounting where they're saying, do I actually want this in my life? I mean, we see that all the way from people hopping off TikTok, boycotting businesses, to Jamie Dimon telling the Coinbase CEO that you're full of shit. Um, you're 100% right. People are looking around and going like, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like, I think the Neptune into Aries is pretty reinvigorating. I mean, yeah, talking about the fire element. And, a lot of these structures, are not as sustainable as they once were. There is something of crumbling structures, but it's also driven by the people's collective yearning for something more meaningful, something greater. And as we think about something richer.
Yeah.
if we're not living like a rich experience, how can we live a richer experience? What about our systems is preventing us from breaking through to an next threshold? I think that's kind of a part of what I look at. Like if I were to summarize February's um, energetic signature in a phrase, it would be crossing the threshold. That's because Pisces is the last sign of the entire zodiac. Aries is the very first sign. Aries is the beginning of spring. That's a time of renewal, of life being reborn. And so it's funny because we've been building up to Neptune and Saturn conjoining together, but they've been getting closer in Pisces, which is very different vibe than Aries. And then so it's like they build up, build up, build up, but then they go into Aries. And it's like, whoa, this looks a lot more different than I thought it was going to. But it's pretty cool because it's almost like a rebirth of not only the individual, but of, a lot of spirit. Aries is, in ancient times, Aries, it's kind of the sign of the warrior. It's a fighter. In modern times, Aries has a lot of physicality to it. So it's more manifest in something like an athlete, but also as an entrepreneur. And so I think about kind of the solopreneur revolution as one example of like this rebirth that we're on. Now, yeah, going through the rebirth, it's there's a part that's like, the past is the past. If we move forward, it's like not moving backward. So I think in this process, there's a lot of processing to going on as well. There's like grieving. I was just having a conversation with some friends about, man, I feel like a lot this week. I feel like I'm grieving so much of the past. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. You felt any of that or any of that resonate for you?
It does. I was before that. I was just gonna add one more comment. I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
I'm always on the lookout for the next trend. Um, because every 3 or 4 months on Wealth and Wisdom, we do what's basically a very impromptu and very kind of loosey goosey trend prediction for the next quarter or the next half of the year. One thing that seems to be popping up more and more now is people are going back to what started post COVID, where they're going back to the idea of like, oh, my day job's not really serving me. Um, and I don't really like my financial situation. I don't really like my physical situation. So I need to do some things to move forward and live a better life. Um,
No.
it, of course, as someone who's working in a startup focused on that, obviously I'm excited about that because that's going to work in our favor. That's going to provide clients to Beyond Abundance, the software startup I'm working on, but also as like a broader sense.
It's also
Um,
like what you're offering. Like, I
yeah.
think what you're offering, not only because it comes from somewhere that like you realize people need this,
Mhm.
like people are going to be so grateful for what you can provide to them. And that's also
Right.
something that's like, yeah, the Soul Notes just left a comment. Do you think school system is good? I mean, like, great. Because I think it tries to make employees not much education on life. How do you live with purpose stuff? And yeah, that of course gives me flashbacks to, industrial age, industrial revolution.
Can I share the
Yeah.
dirty secret of the education system with your listeners here?
Yeah, I
Um,
think we have the same opinion.
we definitely do. So I always felt this way, but as part of my job here at Beyond Abundance, back when I was a business analyst, I was instructed with doing a deep dive research on the American education system. And from its very core, the public school system was built off what's called the Prussian model. And the Prussian model was originally created to make Prussian factory workers, soldiers, and civil servants. It wasn't designed to teach you. Um, if you look at some of what we call the oh, what's it? It's not Aristotelian, but the kind of more Greek philosophical style schools, like the Acton Academy here in the States that we see that are popping up now. That's what education used to be like prior to the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah,
where it
more
was
more like free thinking.
yeah, it was, and it was specifically focused on we're going to challenge everything you know because that's how
That's
you
how
grow.
you expand what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's your learning.
and it was extremely limited. I mean, prior to the 1800s and Horace Mann here in the United States, um, you had typically trade schools or religious schools that would teach you the basics. They would teach you to read. They would teach you to write. They'd teach you basic bookkeeping, and then more importantly, they'd focus on something. It'd be like, okay, you're going to school to be a carpenter, so here's the bare necessity that you need to survive, and now we're only going to focus on carpentry. Or you're going to be, I don't know, a pastor, right? So we're going to teach you all about the Bible, right?
Yeah,
It wasn't until Horace Mann and some other figures decided, you know what, actually, the state should run the school system, uh, and the state should determine the curriculum that we got this experience that Soul Note's feeling.
yeah.
Um,
But somewhere
Government
along the line
agencies,
turns into like the state's interest. Like,
yeah,
if the state's in control, what would
mm,
be their incentive to
right,
how would they want to create schools?
right. And it kind of unfortunately it got even worse because you look at people who funded the public school system in the United States. It was the Rockefeller Foundation. Um, and obviously private donors are not a bad thing, but there's strong historical evidence to suggest that they did it specifically because they saw an opportunity to create more educated factory workers.
Yeah,
Education's great, but if your goal is to teach everyone to work on an assembly line, you're not going to get those more advanced life skills.
exactly. And so, yeah, to go back to kind of Soul Note's question, I think, yeah, both Tyler and I think the school system is designed to, I mean, yeah, 200 years ago was designed to create educated factory workers. And so there's an element even today of like, you go to school to be trained as like an employee, which, yeah, does not always give us the most fulfilling, purposeful lives. And I think especially the transition we're living through right now, so much is changing about the world, so much changing about work. And, we get a lot of our sense of purpose and our sense of identity from the work that we do, what we do with our time every day. And I think because of AI and some other advancements, but also various other reasons as well, so much about the world is changing. There is this theme of questioning our identity. Like if we don't have a strong connection to our jobs, or most people will have like 2 to 3 part-time jobs these days. They're not as like fulfilled in their work. It's like coming back to the sense of like, who am I?
Right.
And that is where we get our purpose. And that is a very personal question that only you can answer. I mean, looking at someone's astrology chart, I do kind of get some insight to the potential of someone's life. That's kind of what I've done. I actually, that's part of what I've done with me. So like in my chart specifically, I have the ninth house activated in a super cool way. I have my sun and Mercury together in the sign of Gemini in the ninth house. The ninth house is the house of foreign travel, higher education, deeper philosophy, spirituality, and even astrology. You can actually look at like if someone's open to astrology or not. I look at whether their ninth house is activated in any way, and that's actually one of those hints. But what's actually one of the weaknesses of my chart that is the second house, and that's kind of the house of finances, resources. Now, looking back on my life, I can totally see how I always thought one of my main bottlenecks was going to be about like money and finances, and so I got obsessed about more to like plug that hole. But I can see how like the higher expression of what I meant to do is Yeah, deeper philosophy stuff, astrology work. And I got into astrology and I was like, wow, it was quite the awakening. The awakening comes to mind with Neptune, the planet of fantasy, coming together with Saturn, the planet of reality. These two coming together looks like it, it looks like the Great Awakening in some respects. So I think with all the vibes that are going to be going on in February, there's something about waking up to the limitations of the current system, the call in our own hearts, whispers of our own soul about what we're meant to do. And we're just not buying the bullshit anymore. Plain and simple.
That needs to be on a t-shirt or a sweatshirt.
We're not buying the bullshit anymore.
Not not buying the bullshit anymore. That would sell like hotcakes.
But like, it's also a double entendre because it's like the system supports because of our collective effort. Like, I wrote a piece a long time ago about how we vote with our dollar. So it's like what you spend your money on is what you support in one way or another. And the system does rely on our continued, uh, like business or our continued support, financial support, our dollar to sustain itself. So if we don't buy the bullshit anymore, that is kind of how we protest against the system.
I
And yeah,
yeah.
those themes, yeah, because it's Aquarius season, these are definitely like things we're thinking about. And this is going to be highlighted especially on the Aquarius eclipse on February 17th. Power to the people. What is in the way of our power? How do we move forward? Empowering ourselves as a collective.
If
Which is
I could
also,
add
yeah.
some,
Oh,
sorry, go
yeah.
ahead, didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just saying, this is the first eclipse in Aquarius. There's going to be a longer cycle of this because, yeah, over the next couple years, there's going to be more eclipses in Aquarius. This is the first one of kind of a new cycle. So it is starting something, but it's also continuing the Pluto in Aquarius story, which has to do with no king's protests, but also AI, scientific, technological advancement. People coming together. And that's a really big key of this month as well, with Venus and Pisces, Jupiter and Cancer contacting each other, creating the connection between us, between the people, emotionally, spiritually, unconditional love. Yeah, what were you gonna say? I was interested to hear.
Oh, I was gonna say there's more than just feel good vibes to that. I mean, if you look at some of the higher demographic trends that are going on, um, one of the biggest being a almost outright revolt against tyranny, I think is the best word to put it. And
Yeah, I see the
you
word
know,
fascism thrown around.
um, we need to be careful with our language. Obviously, I'm not
That's
one of
fine.
those words hurt people, but we do need to know what we're talking about.
That's fine.
Um, and I don't know how much of the stuff you see about Trump in particular falls in that category. But you look around the world, like the ICE protests, you're looking at the fall of the Ayatollah in Iran. Is another example. You see these cultural movements all around the world that are like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Um, I also heard a comment from my father who listens to a lot of specifically conservative media that there's been a resurgence in religious activity. There's been a resurgence in family formation in certain political groups. Uh, and other movements are still very, very strong. I mean, if I just ask AI here, anti-war, anti-globalization, uh, a more focus on wellness and mindfulness that we talked about,
Yeah. I see that.
anti-consumerism.
I see that, yeah, in the people. Like it's like geopolitical tensions are escalating and it's like there's conflict among like the leaders of the world, but it's like the everyday people of the world like us. Like we're kind of, more connected than we ever were across borders. Like there's definitely a sentiment among everyday people anti-war, as you're saying. Like we're in some respects coming together, learning to
Hmm.
understand one another, overcoming various challenges, especially, the financial ones that most of us struggling financially. It's a statistical truth. But yeah, so there's that disconnect between, and that's kind of what I think about with the will of the people coming up against structures that no longer have the staying power to support itself, is the dichotomy between, those that hold power and, the people. But the people are the majority. Like, we are coming to realize our power.
Yeah. I think it's a very telling remark that, and this kind of slid under the rug, which I'm unfortunate that I wish more, especially independent journalists like Ken Klippenstein and others, had really laser focused in on this. It actually, for me, shows where a lot of people's colors are on Substack. Not like a Democrat versus Republican or whatever kind of way, but like, who do you support kind of way? Whose camp are you in? Um, because I think it was Jamie Dimon who got up on stage and told the rest of the leaders of the free world and the non-free world that people don't trust institutions anymore, um,
Yeah.
which is a tragedy. I'm in Sarah Payne's camp where the institutions of the 21st century is what built this growth. It's the idea that you could go anywhere on earth and use a credit card. It's the idea that, if you're in Germany and I'm in the US, um, I can ship you my goods and we can do business without shooting at each other. Uh,
Yeah. But there are
but
institutions that have done things to lose our trust. Like, we're not completely
100%.
blameless in this scenario. I mean, just think of like credit cards, I mean, if I pay in credit card, I kind of hand over a lot of my information as well. That could be
Yeah.
one of the respects in which we have a desire to no longer buy the bullshit.
Yeah. And I think that comes from a fact that we talked about this before. It comes from the hard currency world. I think it's a broader lesson. Um, the social contract says that we give, as the people, certain things to institutions. Uh, we give them, most importantly, the ability to exist under certain conditions. Um, and I think a lot of institutions have failed those conditions.
Yeah,
Uh,
in response, or like in agreement with that, institutions or like especially like the government serve the best interests of the people.
yes,
There's some
that
evidence that they're not doing that.
one of the biggest reasons, and this is going way back in like the early days of democracy in the modern world. One of the main theories of the social contract was that we, the people, will not rise up and hang you as long as you have our best interest at heart. We give up
Right.
our natural right to defend ourselves in some way against specifically our neighbors, and our right to forcefully receive payment for grievances by use of violence. We give that up to the government, the rule of law. That was the original idea. And, I personally believe after World War II, when we saw the horrors that came out of centrally planned systems and fascist systems around the world, that's when kind of the greatest generation came in and said, okay, we really need to put some guardrails in place to prevent this from happening. And then over the course of these next like 60 years, 80 years, they've kind of just, I don't know, most world governments in the democratic world have just decided that they don't care about those anymore. It seems to be the
Well,
vibe that I'm getting, ours
is
included.
it that the guardrails are starting to feel a little too restrictive, or like we're in some sort of cage? That's what I'm thinking
Maybe.
about as Saturn comes to Neptune, it is dissolving walls and barriers like that. It is quite the
Mm,
breakthrough. Which, yeah,
no, yeah.
our historical precedent 36 years ago, because yeah, Saturn and Neptune come together every 36 years, was the fall of the Berlin Wall. That was an energy that was, separating people of the power of Soviet Union. Another historical example is last time Neptune was in Aries was the time of the Civil War. Now there is some conflict fighting with Aries itself, but out of the Civil War, we did become a more equalized society, abolition of slavery. That's a more like proverbial wall of something that is separating us. So are you seeing like, do you see sort of boundaries amongst humanity that are potentially starting to come down? There is against the system. That's more the Aquarius story, which is also happening. So we kind of have like the Aquarius story and the Aries story like intersected right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, what
I would agree.
proverbial walls are you seeing like starting to come down?
Um, Honestly, the biggest one, and again, this is because we talked about this before. I focus pretty much exclusively on the economic, geopolitical, and financial worlds. I would say one of the biggest ones that was kind of the undercurrent of the whole Trump Liberation Day that was kind of ignored, in my opinion, was that nobody plays by the rules, and they haven't been for a long time. They say things like, "Oh, well, we're on board with free trade and democracy and all this stuff," and they do these weird, shady, underhanded deals, like keeping Russia out of the financial order, like telling the U.S., "Oh, your beef's too unclean to sell in the UK," um, which is fine if it's the consumers that decide that. If it's the people that decide that, not the government. So it's, I would say, the biggest proverbial walls that have come down, or at least come forward, is, and who knows exactly why it happened, but in the last 2 or 3 years, I feel like we've seen all of the hidden, like, real rules of the game in this world, specifically from the powers that be, come forward. They're visible now. And that's really upsetting people because it turns out that, oh, so we were following the rules and you weren't this whole time.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, but it is
I,
like who's making the rules,
yeah,
and are the rules still serving us like they used to?
right. Um, and I would say we have to be careful. Like, we don't want to take that too far. To
Of
the point
rewriting the
where,
rules?
no, to the point of like blaming everything on like a shadow government or shadow like evil corruption going.
Oh yeah,
I don't think it's that simple, but it's definitely the case where you look around and you're like, okay, what? So how much of this was just kayfabe, like Eric Weinstein puts it? Like, how much of this was just a big theater performance that you were putting on, and then in the background you were just doing whatever you want?
right. And no, yeah, I agree. It's not, can't only blame, you know, forces outside yourself for what's wrong in the world, in your life. Um, I think with Neptune's recent movements, there's a big like calling for, within. I think about a song like Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. There's a lot of like being reflected. So much of life is like a reflection of what's going on inside. And when I think about kind of the battle between the light and the dark, you think of like shadow government, something like the light and the dark. Um, I think about one of the best ways to heal humanity, rid the world of some darkness is just looking within, flushing, purging your own darkness, coming to heal yourself to make the world a brighter place, connect with your inner light, purge some of your inner darkness, which we all have. But yeah, that's definitely not a journey anyone's meant to go on alone. Like it is, that's what I think about with coming together. Like no one's meant to be in this world. No one comes into this world meant to be alone. And especially in times like this, it is about coming together.
No, yeah. I can't remember his name, but there's a really good philosopher I learned about a couple of years ago. Jordan B. Peterson talks about him a lot. Uh, Maybe Nietzsche. It might be Nietzsche. I don't know for sure. But
Oh yeah, the philosopher.
um, one of the things that they bring, whoever this was, brought up over and over again is um, what's your part to play in your own suffering and
Yeah.
in your own kind of self tyranny, right? Where you have situation, like you said, where it's like maybe it's not all outside ourselves. How often have we gone, oh man, you know, my health isn't great, my finances aren't great. I really wish I could spend more time with my partner. I wish I was more focused at work. I wish I was doing something meaningful. And then we leave work that we didn't really do during the day. We get home, we sit down on the couch, we eat a bag of McDonald's, and we scroll through TikTok instead of spending time with our partner.
Yeah, those are all indeed signs that we're kind of doing it to ourselves, or at least, yeah, not blameless.
Partially, yeah. I would say, yeah.
That kind of reminds me of this book by Napoleon Hill. It's a lesser known work of his called Outwitting the Devil. He kind of talks about how the habit of drifting is kind of how you come under like the devil's spell. And it's, things like that. It's kind of like we are our habits, like how you spend your time is ultimately who you are in a sense. And if the devil's working to get you to, not take good care of yourself, getting you to operate out of a state of fear or a state of other negative emotions, you kind of fall under like the devil's spell. And I forget what you said that made me think of that. Oh yeah, just coming home, McDonald's, Netflix. It's it's something like, yeah, that definitely makes me think of like looking in the mirror, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Um,
Identifying that darkness within is part of how you outwit the devil.
I got to tell you two fun things I've started to do because it fits in here. And this is not just a
Okay.
brag in any way, shape, or form. Um, but there's two prayers that I'm saying in the back of my head now often. I've had kind of a spiritual shift at the start of the year. And maybe it's because, I'm going to be a father in the next couple months and things
Oh,
in my life are
congratulations.
actually moving. Thank you. I don't really talk about it, but yeah, that's happening soon. I felt a spiritual shift when I found out that we were expecting. Um,
That's
it
certainly
shift,
good news.
yeah. I mean, it shifted how I work. It shifted how I think. Uh, but one of the or two of the big things that really stuck out to me is one, I wasn't really asking for the help of heaven in what I do, and obviously not everyone believes in that, so that's fine. But I do personally, and also I was doing a lot of things to support my own tyranny. You know,
Hmm.
um, in how I eat, how I live my life. Um,
And so
and
suddenly with the news of becoming a father, you had the realization that your life becomes much more than just about you.
yeah, 100%. And so the two prayers that I've started saying more often, kind of in the back of my head, is one I'm calling the entrepreneur's prayer, which is, Heavenly Father, please help me to see opportunities when they appear and help me to be prepared when they do happen. Because I don't believe in luck. I believe in, I definitely believe in timing where you can have lucky timing,
Yeah.
but I believe the preparation comes before that. And you have
That,
to actually have done that work to even see the opportunity when it shows up, when the right time shows up.
oh, 100%. Success is preparation meeting opportunity, something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. Um, or if you want to take the more pessimistic approach, it's practicing for perfection with not enough time to do it.
Actually, with not enough time to.
um,
I hadn't heard that one.
and the second one is, dear God, please help me not to screw up my life. Uh, and
Not to screw up.
it's reframed how I look at the world. I mean, I really haven't talked about on my show what until very, very recently. I'm helping to build a company, technically three. I'm doing this stuff with you, and
Yeah, you're doing a lot
all
right now.
the all the important stuff has fallen by the wayside. I wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't taking good care of myself. I wasn't sleeping. Sure, I was going to the gym a couple times a week, but I wasn't doing, like I wasn't growing at
There's only
all.
so much of you to go around. Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's a theme I noticed with Saturn and Aries. Because, yeah, we had a bit of a preview in 2025 of all these planets in their new signs, and they retrograded back. So I remember last summer, Saturn was in Aries. Like, Aries is all about the actions that we do, but Saturn is a bit of a restrictor, a limiter. So with that vibe of Saturn Aries, it is something like you don't have all the time you think you have. You don't have all the resources that you need. It's like, how can you move forward, make progress anyway? So I started really thinking about like priorities. Like if I only can get like, 1, 2, 3 things done today, like, what are the highest priorities? I think that's definitely a important thing to keep in mind to have success with Saturn and Aries, as well as the energy we're moving into. So yeah, so what happened after that? You started realizing you weren't taking great care of yourself. You weren't doing the important things. Was it kind of like a reassessment of what was important to you, or what are my priorities? Already. Yes, thanks you for joining, Tyler. Um, yeah, I think, Mercury retrograde we didn't talk about yet. Trine Jupiter. So yeah, among the other myriad of things we'll be experiencing in February, Mercury is going to enter its pre-retrograde shadow and then ultimately turn retrograde on February 25th. Now, there's always three sections to a retrograde. Retrograde just means the planet is moving backwards, or at least appears to be moving backwards from our perception on Earth. Because, Earth is also moving. So if Mercury is retrograde, it's just that Earth is moving faster than Mercury is moving. Now, Mercury goes retrograde 3 or 4 times a year. Really not the biggest deal. But yeah, 3 phases to the story is the part when it enters the pre-retrograde shadow. So that is when it enters the point that it will ultimately come back to after the retrograde is complete. So it gets the pre-retrograde shadow. Here it stays in retrograde. Then it starts moving backwards. Goes back here. The retrograde ends. It starts moving forward again. But we're going over the same part of the sky, same part of our journey 3 times. So the first chapter does begin, I believe it was early to mid-February. I forget exactly what day. Like February 8th or so. We're going to be coming back to themes of February throughout the Mercury retrograde cycle, which lasts, all of March. Mercury's retrograde from February 25th to March 20th. And because it's in Pisces, like this is the area of the zodiac that both Neptune and Saturn have just left. Saturn goes into Aries February 13th. So, and because this is the end of the entire zodiac, this is the end of some pretty long journeys that we've been on. This is the part that we're experiencing loss or grieving, what we're moving away from. This is the past. There's some hard feelings to go along with moving forward. Talking about that grieving cycle. Mercury retrograde is going to help us process everything we went through during this time. I mean, Neptune was in Pisces since 2011. Talking about rise of social media. If we're ditching TikTok, are we grieving our experience with TikTok? Could be one way it happened. Sorry I dropped suddenly, but it was fun talking with you. Always a pleasure, Tyler. Dude, thanks for coming on. So yeah, a lot of processing this month as we move into new worlds, as we cross into the threshold. Now, yeah, because it's happening at 0 degrees Aries, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening at 0 degrees Aries. That is a renewal of truly epic proportions. I mean, yeah, talking about the last time Neptune was in Aries was 160 years ago, during the time of the Civil War. Sure, it was a conflict, but out of it, we got the abolition of slavery. that is an example of a new world that we entered into. We entered into a world where slavery was no longer allowed. Now, of course, racism, discrimination continued for a long time after that. But a threshold was crossed. That's, part of the example of what will be going on in 2026. And yeah, it just looks really cool with Venus kind of coming in to smooth things over as well. Can be a little bit of a romanticizing the past, but ultimately we are moving away from it, which will become clear as we get into Aries season. Both Venus and Mercury move out of Pisces into Aries, coming in for Venus, that's in March. For Mercury, that's in April. And then we get a heavy Aries stellium in late March into April. So right now, we're finishing a Aquarius stellium. Those are two of the highlights of 2026, the Aquarius story, the Aries story. But then also the Leo story, the Aquarius and Leo axis being highlighted. Who we are as a society, as a collective. But how does that come from the individual and our individual needs and desires from the heart? Neptune going into Aries, the spiritual fire. What is the meaning, purpose of life? Later in the year, we're going to talk about Uranus going into Gemini. So the year of 2026 is a year in which we move into fire and air signs. Now, those are the masculine signs, the more active signs. The earth and water signs are the more feminine, reflective, passive signs. And that kind of ties into the year of the fire horse. We're moving out of the year that was quite reflective, regenerating, purging. So if you felt like 2025 is maybe something of like a down year, that's part of why. But 2026, largely happening with Neptune moving into Aries, Saturn moving into Aries, right around this time. 2026 is about moving forward momentum, blazing a new trail if it doesn't already exist. It's a lot. It's super cool, but it's also a lot. So with eclipse season as well, it is important to understand the quality of time we're in and that it is a lot and that we're all going to process differently. There is a lot of support thanks to Venus and Jupiter, which does look like unconditional love coming together, building a home, strong home, family ties, ties with those around you. That's how some of the proverbial walls are coming down as well. Alrighty, so that should be a pretty decent summation of the month, year, other themes. We didn't touch on Mars square Uranus. February 27th, Mars in Aquarius will square Uranus in Taurus. It is volatile. It is a volatile energy. If everything else wasn't happening in February, I would say it's a bigger deal than it is, but since so much is happening in February, it almost looks like icing on the cake. Probably just like increased risk of accidents. And on top of the Mercury retrograde, the last week of February, so like February 25th through February 28th, there's some volatile energy. So as much as you can exercise caution, that would be a good thing. Now, yeah, in the macro, it's all a forward momentum, fire building year as we begin the year of the fire horse. But because of the Mercury retrograde, we are taking some time to reflect, almost say goodbye to all the Pisces journey that we've been on with going back to 2011. Saturn's been in Pisces the last 2.5 years. So Saturn, we're saying goodbye to all that. So it is like there's a lot of active moving forward energy, but then there is that that's the year. It's like the Mercury retrograde, February, March. There is some reflecting that is going on as well. It's kind of more of like a closing out, saying goodbye type vibe. Because yeah, I always have some of my best meditation sessions during Mercury retrograde. All the can be like tech glitches, miscommunications. There's a lot of like administrative activities that become more difficult under Mercury retrograde, and that's why it's not like it can be hard to get things done. But the kind of the purpose of that is to slow down, kind of take things apart. What's not working with us? How can this be improved? So that'll be one of the themes we're going on with the Mercury retrograde. All right, yeah. So that's it for today's episode. I'll probably doing these about once a month. I kind of like the jumping on live, talking to guys, going through the astrology. Thank you very much to Tyler for joining today's session. So we'll experiment with bringing certain guests on and talking through it together. So until next time, take care, everyone. Happy February.